Christian Atheist, week 4, take 1.
Oh, I'm so nervous. Sorry, honey, if I'm glistening.
There's nothing to be worried about. We've gone through the questions. We have all the details of the bake sale.
I just hope it doesn't rain. That'd be just my luck for it to be rained out.
Luck? So you don't believe in God?
Oh, of course I believe in God. He just doesn't always do things my way.
I understand. I'm the same way. I'm a bit of a control freak. Comes with the job.
Well, God helps those who help themselves, you know. I mean, surely the Lord doesn't want me to just take my hands off the steering wheel. I give him some things, but you can't leave things to chance.
Well, good morning and welcome to Salem Grace. Thanks for being here again, and happy 4th of July weekend. Hope you guys have, I agree with Cheryl. I think we do live in the greatest country on earth, and so thankful that we can sit here in freedom this morning and enjoy this. So I'm grateful for that. We're gonna celebrate with the pre-4th of July party this afternoon, and do all the Southern Illinois redneck stuff and barbecue and cornhole and maybe some bloated swimming later after that, which will be good. Don't come by, it'll make you sick. But we are, I'm thankful. We are wrapping up this series called Christian Atheist, and you think, well, that's a weird term, right? If you're just joining us for the first week, Christian Atheist is a weird term because we know what an atheist is, right? An atheist is somebody who doesn't believe in God. They just don't believe and don't believe in God. But what I've shared over the past couple weeks in this message series is the fact that 94% of Americans actually believe in God, which is crazy because we really don't see that evidenced in people's life. And so a Christian atheist is someone who believes in God, but they live like he doesn't exist. So he really has no bearing on our life. He doesn't impact the way we live. He doesn't impact the way we talk. He doesn't impact the places we go or the things we do or how we raise our kids or what we do on the weekends with our friends. And, he has absolutely no impact on our lives. And so it's really just what we call a Christian atheist. And I think some of us kind of fit that definition. And so we've been talking over the past 4 weeks about that concept of Christian atheism. And I think that I hope that you've enjoyed, hopefully it's more than you've enjoyed this series that we've been in if you've been here for the last 4 weeks. I hope that you've been, maybe you've been entertained or whatever, but I hope that it's more than that. And really, I really hope that it's actually challenged some of you to make a change in your life. And I hope that you've heard something that God has spoken to your heart. And if so, my question to you this morning, if over the past few weeks in what we've been talking about, this concept of I believe in God, but I really don't allow him to impact me. And maybe over the past couple of weeks, I've had people say, hey, good sermon, and thanks a lot, I appreciate that. But really, my goal isn't to make this entertaining or just to have a good sermon. My goal is that you guys get something out of this, and you think, maybe there is something I need to change in my life. So my question to you this week is really, what have you done differently over the past week? Has there been anything different evidenced in your life? Are you making any kind of a change in your life, or are you sitting here the same as you were sitting here last Sunday? And if that's the case, you're kind of missing the point. And so the goal is for each one of us to take something that God speaks to us about and pricks our heart, and we feel like, yeah, that's probably he's talking directly to me. I have people tell me that all the time. Were you looking directly at me? I was like, no, I was. But and people say, well, you really spoke to me, and I didn't speak to you at all. God spoke through me. And so my question is, what are you doing with that? How are you applying that to your life? Are you making any kind of progress in your relationship with Christ this week? Are you just walking to your car and doing the same things that you always do? And so, when we talk about church, and I preached a sermon several weeks ago called Me, My Church and I, and it really talks about our experience at church. And I think church, most of the time, I'll give you a little English lesson. Not that I'm very good at English. Matter of fact, my grades were horrible. But I did learn this, that a noun is a person, place, or a thing, right? And I think that, I believe church is more of a verb. It should be a verb. It should be an action verb. It should be who we are. Really, church isn't this building, and we've heard that our whole lives. Church isn't this building, or it isn't a place on Route 37 North, 1900 North Broadway, that it's Salem Grace. Really, church, what Salem Grace is really is a reflection of each one of you. So what our community, what Salem sees out of Salem Grace Church and Nazarene is you and me. And it's a reflection of each one of us. And so I want to just challenge us with that. I really think it should be that. And so week one, we talked about that, there are people that believe in God, 94% of Americans, but really don't know him. They don't have any kind of personal relationship with God. The second week, we talked about people who believe in God, but really don't fear him. They don't fear the wrath of God, or they don't fear the judgment of God. They feel like that they can just do whatever they want to do and put God on their terms, and really he's just going to say, well, because you're a good guy, and people really don't have this fear of God. And so, and then last week we talked about people who believe in God, and maybe some people like this, who believe in God, but really just don't want to go overboard. I'm fine coming to church and sitting on Sunday, and I'm fine to going to church, but I don't want to be a Jesus freak. I don't want to offend anybody. I don't want to do anything that's going to make me feel awkward in front of my friends or in front of the people I work with. So it's really people who believe in God but don't want to go overboard. So really just all these descriptors of what a Christian atheist is. And so today I want to wrap up with I believe in God, but I really don't trust him. We say we believe in God. 94% of Americans, all of us, say that we believe in God, but we don't really and truly, do we really truly trust him? Do we trust him with things in our life? Do we trust him to deliver what he says he will deliver? And so I want to start with a story into this message. And some of you have been around church, you know the story, and some of you who don't know the story. But I want to talk about a story about the Israelites, which way back when, in the Old Testament, in Deuteronomy, you'll read about Israelites, and they were these people from Israel. They were Jews. They moved to Egypt because of a famine. I'm going to kind of give you some backstory here. Moved to Egypt because of a famine, and then they started populating really crazy, and then the Egyptians were like, oh man, these Israelites are going to take over, so let's take them captive and make them our slaves. So that's what the Egyptians did. They took all these Jews and Israelites in Egypt, made them slaves, and for 400 years, these Jewish Israelites were slaves in Egypt. They made bricks all day and built pyramids and stuff. I don't know. But they were slaves. And so for 400 years, and then God basically raised up this guy named Moses, who found you may have heard of Moses, raised up this guy named Moses, and he said, I'm going to ask you to lead my people out of Egypt, out of slavery. I'm going to rescue them from slavery, and then I'm going to take you guys, these Israelites, and I'm going to deliver you to what they call the Promised Land. And it's just this milk and honey were flowing, and it was just awesome ground. And the Israelites were excited about it, but they couldn't really get their head wrapped around how that was going to happen. And so Moses went to Pharaoh, and he said, what? Let my people go. And so Pharaoh let his people go, and then they took them and they walked through the Red Sea and all that stuff, and then they ended up in the desert. And so what happened was they were supposed to go to this Promised Land. And so they come up to the edge of the Jordan River, and the Promised Land was over on the other side, and they said, well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go into the Promised Land. They said, we better send out some scouts. And they sent out scouts to check out the Promised Land, and then they came back, and most of the scouts, if you know the story, were saying, hey, listen, we went over there, checked it out. We can't do that. We ain't gonna make that happen. They're huge, they're giants, they will kick our tails all over the place. We better not try this. Even though God had promised to deliver that land to them, they were scared. And so they didn't. And so for 40 years, they wandered around in the desert because they didn't believe into the promise that God had given them to take them into the Promised Land. And so then we pick this up. So 40 years have passed. They come up to the Jordan River again. God is still promising to deliver them into this Promised Land. And we see this scripture in Deuteronomy chapter 9, verse 23, and it says this, go up and take possession of the land I have given you. But you rebelled against the command of the Lord your God. And I love this next part. And this is kind of where we all fall sometimes. You did not trust him or obey him. So what God is saying to the Israelites and this people is like, hey, you guys didn't trust that God was going to, you didn't trust what he said, that he was going to deliver you into this ground, but I'm going to give it to you, not because you've been good, but because I'm good. Because I'm God and I'm good, I'm going to give you this land. Not because you were good and you did anything great. In fact, you guys were a bunch of idiots. You made a bunch of golden calves and made a bunch of really stupid decisions, but you're still my people. I love you. I'm going to give you this ground. And so that's what happened. And so here's the thing. I think sometimes we can't get what God promises us wrapped around in our heads. And so we want to take control of things. Anybody, who would raise their hand in here this morning, just honestly, and say, there are things that I like to control? Just raise your hands. Okay, lift them high. Okay, and there you go. And if you're raising somebody else's hand, you have a control problem. Okay? So, I was like, see, don't raise my hand. I love it. But there are things, and I have those things too. Like, I'm a guy, so naturally the remote is mine. And I freak out when I can't find it. We have two remotes because we have this sound system, and it takes two remotes to work. It drives me crazy. Like, I can't, it's like an Easter egg hunt every time I want to watch TV. It's like, okay, where's it under the cushion? And so, but I have to have control. Another area in my life that I love, and some of you know this about me, but I cannot do public transportation. I can't do it. Don't ask me. If we go to a Cardinal game, do not ask me to ride the Metro. I can't do it. I like to be, thank you. Yes, thank you. Somebody did that to me once. Hey, we'll take the back. We'll get out of Belleville. It'll be so easy. Ride the Metro, they say. It'll be fun. No, thank you. Riding over wasn't too bad. We got on the Metro. I went to a Cardinal game once, rode on the Metro, went over there. And then coming out of the Cardinal game, everybody's like sweaty and drunk and like weird. And then you get on there and you get on this Metro and everybody's like, I was like hanging on because there wasn't any place to sit. And you're just kind of hanging on there with all these sweaty, drunk people. And I had one, no. But I'm like, and I turn like this, and somebody else is standing there like this with their arm, and it was like face to face with this hairy armpit. It was like sweaty, and I was like, oh. And then I bumped into it. I'm like, pardon me, ma'am. But it was so don't. I will not ride the Metro with you. I like to be in my driver's seat and in control, and there are things in my life that I don't want to be in somebody else's control when it comes to where my destination is. So don't ask me to do that. Because I like to drive primarily because 95% of people don't do it right, and so I like to do it myself. But here's the thing. I think we apply that same thing in our walk with Christ. We don't want to give him control of everything in our life. Like, there are certain things that we can't let go of. Like, I want to believe in God, and I want to serve him, and I want to make it to heaven, but I really don't want to follow any of the rules, and I kind of want to make all the rules up myself, and I don't want to do that. And so there are times that we have all this. And so here's the problem I see that where we are with Christian atheism and Christianity. I think some of us are living a partially surrendered life. Did you catch that? Some of you are living just part of it. You're here this morning, you're living a partially surrendered life. Like, part of your life you've been, okay, God, I'm okay giving you this piece, but I am not okay giving you the rest of this stuff. And so, some things are easy for us, right? There are some things that are easy for us to give control of, and some things are hard. Give you an example. For me, like, I know there are some people like freak out over like politics and who our president is, and they freak out over like terrorist stuff, and they're scared to death. And I could care less about any of that. Literally, like I'm totally okay surrendering that to God. I'm like, hey, it's in your hands. I don't care who's president. I don't care who Kim Jong, whoever he is. I don't care what kind of bombs he has. I don't care. It just, for me personally, it doesn't bother me a bit. I really could care less because I know that I serve a God, and I've read the end of the book, and I know how it ends. We win. Yeah. We're on the winning team here. So that doesn't freak me out. So I'm okay giving him that. And then there are things that are hard to trust God with, like our kids. Maybe our finances. A little bit harder, right? We're living a partially surrendered life. And there's a scripture in Proverbs that if you read it in the PSV version, you know there's different versions of the Bible, and there's one called a PSV version. Some of you are like, really? I did not know that. It's called a partially surrendered version. Reads like this, okay? Let me read it for you. Proverbs chapter 3. Now this is out of the PSV version. It says this. Trust in the Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. You might want to get out your Bible. This is the partially surrendered version. Trust in the Lord with some of your heart. Lean on your own understanding. And in some of your ways, acknowledge him, and you can make your own path straight. That's the version that some of us are living. Do you understand that? Because we're living partially surrendered lives. We're going to hold on to this. We're going to hold on to that. We're going to grip to this. We're going to grip to that. But I'm not giving you this and that. Here's what the regular version sounds like. The God version out of the NIV. It says this. Trust in the Lord with what? Some of it? All of your heart. And lean with? Not on your own understanding. That means we can't figure it out. You understand that? That means God is going to ask you to do stuff, and it's not going to make sense. In our heads, in our pea brain, our little brains are rolling around up there like a BB in a boxcar, and it doesn't make sense to us. So don't lean on your own understanding. Don't try to understand God's will. It isn't going to make sense a lot of times. In how many of your ways? All of your ways. Acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. It's not about living a partially surrendered life. It's about giving it all to him. Our family, our wives, our kids, our finances, our social life, our entertainment, the stuff we do, our relationships, everything. Everything. I'll give God some things, but not everything. And I think that's the lives that we're living sometimes. You know, I think some people say, you know what, I'll tell you what, God, here's the deal. I'll give you an hour for church a week, 1 hour. I'll give you an hour of church, maybe, if I don't have something else better going on. Maybe I'll give you an hour, but I'm not going to give you my Friday and Saturday because that's mine, and we are going to live it up. Some people say, you know what, I'm going to give you some quiet time. I'll give you some quiet time, but I'm not going to let you influence like what kind of movies I watch. I'll give you this, God, but I'm not giving you this. I still want to watch all the dirty, funny. But they're funny. Yeah, I know they're funny. They're filthy. I'll trust you with my salvation, but not watching my kids. I'll follow the church on Facebook, but I'm not going to give any tithe. I'm not going to put anything in the offering plate consistently. I'll believe you'll answer prayers for others, but maybe I'm not sure that you're going to answer prayers for me. I've got something here, we do this sometimes too. I'm worried about this, God, so I'm going to give it to you. I'm going to go to the altar, I'm going to pray, I'm going to ask you to take this, and then I'm going to wait. Oh, took too long. I'm going to take that back. I'm going to start worrying about that because you obviously can't handle it, God. It's not in my time frame. I want to trust you with everything. I just can't do it. So here's the thing this morning, church. If you hear nothing else to say, here's the thing. And I know this from experience. God has got an amazing plan for your life and for what he wants to do through you. But you will never, ever fully experience that if you're holding something back. Do you hear me? You are never going to experience life to its fullest here on this earth unless you give him absolutely everything and not hold anything back. I don't know what that looks like for every one of you. It may look like something different for each one of us. You know, maybe finances are your thing. And you're thinking, you know what, I don't know, I can't ever serve. God, I'm going to trust you with everything, but let me control my bank account. Don't tell me what to do with my money. That was God making his point. Thank you. We're never going to experience everything that God has for us. If you're holding back on stuff, you're going to hit a brick wall. And I believe, I believe you, God, but I can't trust you completely. That's what you're saying. I can't trust you completely if you're holding on to something. Christian atheists, they say they believe in God, they just don't trust him completely. So are you a Christian atheist this morning? Do you trust God completely with everything? I'll show you a picture. I love pictures. Anybody know this guy? Nope. Anybody go to school with him? Probably not. Maybe some of you. This guy is Charles Blondin. His name is Charles Blondin. He was a French tightrope walker. That's what he did for a living. Walk tightropes. And on September 14th, 1859, some of you may have been there. September 14th, 1859, Charles Blondin, for the first time ever, stretched a tightrope across Niagara Falls, 1,100 feet. It's over a quarter of a mile over Niagara Falls, and walked across the tightrope for the first time in September 14th, 1859, 160 feet above Niagara Falls. Walked across it. He didn't stop there. He continued to walk across it. Crowds would gather, started to make a living out of it. That's what he did for a living. He would do all kinds of crazy stuff. Like he'd walk across. One time he put himself in a sack. Weird, walked across it. One time he did it on a bike. One time he did it on stilts. He did it blindfolded. One time, particularly, he started on the American side, walked backwards across 1,100 feet. On his return home from Canada to America, he brought with him a wheelbarrow full of potatoes. Right there he is. He ran this wheelbarrow full of potatoes all the way back across to the American side, dumped the potatoes out. Crowd went nuts. Can you believe he did that? It's free. It's blown. Guy walked across with a wheelbarrow, and then so he turned to the crowd. This crowd would gather around. He's like, and maybe you may have heard this story, but it's a true story. He's like, hey, who thinks I could carry a man in this wheelbarrow across this line? And everybody's like, this one guy's like, I believe you could do it. I didn't know you could do it. He's like, okay, well, get in. Nope. I ain't getting in that wheelbarrow. Do I believe you can do it? Absolutely. The crowd thought he could do it. There wasn't a person in that crowd that denied that he could do it. But nobody was willing to get in the wheelbarrow. It's exactly where we're living. It's exactly where we're at as Christians today. Do I believe God can do it? Oh yeah, woohoo! My God's bigger, we'll clap. Get in the wheelbarrow. Take a step. Start tithing when you don't have the money in the bank, when he tells you to. Take a foster kid in. Lead a grow group. Quit your job and become a preacher. Get in the wheelbarrow. It's a whole different experience than just sitting on a puffy blue chair at Salem Grace Church in the Nazarene and saying, oh, I believe in God. Are you willing to get in the wheelbarrow? That's the question. Read about a guy in the New Testament, Peter, did the same thing. Saw Jesus walking on the water. Jesus said, hey, come to me, Peter. He climbs over the rail of the boat. It's that first step that gets us, right? It's the start that stops us. Do you have the courage to get out of the boat? Peter did. He said, man, I want to experience something bigger than myself for once. I want to experience the fullness and the richness, and it's scary, you bet it is. I've never felt more alive than when I quit my job. Is it scary? Yes. Is it worth it? Absolutely. It's the start that stops us. Here's the thing, though. I don't want to beat everybody up. You're not alone in your struggles. People have struggled with this from the beginning of time. And I love this story in Mark. There's a story in Mark about a guy. He's a dad. He's got a son. Any dads here with sons? Would you do just about anything for your son? Probably would, wouldn't you? I would. He has a son that's been possessed by a demon. And this demon tries to do anything and everything he can to kill his son. He throws him into the pond. He throws him into the fire. He does all kinds of stuff to his son, takes over his son's body, and this dad is just at his wit's end. And in Mark chapter 9, he says this. He finally comes to Jesus, and he says this to Jesus. He brings his son. I can just picture this dad. He's just exhausted. Probably hasn't slept because he's just worried. Every time he lays down to sleep, he wakes up and thinks, oh man, is he okay? Probably hasn't slept in months. He's just exhausted. And he says this to Jesus. But if you can, do anything. You ever get to that point? But if you can, just take pity on us and help us. That's what this guy says to Jesus with his son. And this is what Jesus says to him. If you can? Question mark. Said Jesus, everything is possible for one who believes. And immediately the boy's father exclaimed, I do believe. Help me overcome my unbelief. And I think that's where some of us are this morning. I think some of us really do believe in God. But I think some of us need help overcoming our disbelief and help getting out of the boat on what God is asking you to do in your life. I love that. I love that picture of that guy because it's so me. My faith is flawed, Jesus. Help me with it. I want to trust you. And I sort of do, but I don't. But help me. Help me. Help me. Trust you more. I want to ask you to do something this morning. It's kind of weird. I want everybody got their phone, seriously, or a pen and paper. If you don't have your phone, you got your phone, go to your notes section. Let me give you a second to do it. Get out a piece of paper. I'm not even joking. If I see you without your phone, I'm coming out there. Get a piece of paper and write this down. This is for you and you only. Nobody else looking what you're writing. No cheating. Hey, what'd you write? No, I want that. I want you to answer this question, and I seriously want you to jot it down somewhere that you can see it and refer to it this week. It's not even a question, it's just a statement. I want you to finish it. And the statement is this: I don't fully trust God. Blank. Fill that in for you. Where is it in your life that you do not truly trust God? I don't know what that looks like in here. It probably looks like something different for everybody. I don't fully trust God with my children. I don't fully trust God with my salvation. I don't trust God with my finances. I don't fully trust God to forgive me or protect me, to do what's best for me. I don't trust God to love me, to heal me, to guide me, to help me in this relationship, to fix my family, whatever it is, I want you to write that down. And I want you to look at it this week. And I want you to be like that guy who brought his kid to Jesus and say, God, help me with my unbelief. Help me overcome this. I want to believe. You know, for me, I'll just be really transparent. It's a lot of things, probably. I could put a lot of those things in there. But one of the things, honestly, for me, and I'm not super proud of this, but for me, it's my finances. Sometimes I struggle with that. I do okay with it most of the time, but sometimes I worry, like there's not going to be enough, or, you know, am I going to be able to pay for that? Am I going to be able to live the life I want to live, Jesus, if I do this? And so for me, it's that. I don't know what it is for you, but I want you to write that down. Trust in the Lord. You know, we live this half-surrendered life. To develop a wholehearted trust, Proverbs 3:5-6 says this: trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not unto your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your path straight. Submit and acknowledge. If you look at the word that in that scripture, it's called submit. It's a Hebrew word called yada. It's not Yoda. Sorry, it's my Yoda. I've been trying to work that into a sermon for 2 years, but it's a word called yada. It's a Hebrew word that means acknowledge. It means actually coming to know and submitting by observing, reflecting, and experiencing. So you want to know how you come into a relationship where you acknowledge and you submit to Jesus everything in your life. It becomes by reflecting back on things that he's done for you. What God has done, and how he has proved himself over and over. You know, the Israelites, they wandered around in the desert. God did all kinds of miracles and signs, and they were like, still, they didn't trust him. You ever that happen in your life? Stuff just happens all the time. You're like, and you look back and you're like, why don't I ever trust God with things? He's proven himself 150,000 times to me. Why can't I trust him with this one thing in my life? And I think, you know, tell me if I'm not alone here, but we want God to prove himself so that we can trust him, don't we? We want him to do something. We want him to give us a guarantee. You know, we want some kind of safety net or some plan B, you know, and it may be like, hey, you know, God, I've been thinking about tithing and starting to be a really, you know, consistent giver and giving out a generous heart and being consistent in that, but I need you to let me know if I'm going to win the Publishers Clearinghouse tomorrow. We want some kind of safety net. We want God to prove something, or we make some kind of weird fleece, you know, like God may be drawing us in one direction, and you know it in the pit of your heart. Like for me, I knew God was drawing me to be a pastor. I didn't want to admit it though. That's the thing. I resisted it for a long time because I didn't really want to do it, honestly. I saw my dad, and part of that was financially driven. I was like, I want to have this hotshot bank career and be in banking and make a bunch of money and not have to worry about it. Honestly, I'm just being really transparent. But I think sometimes I knew in the pit of my heart, but we made some kind of weird fleece. Like we'll do stuff like, hey God, okay, I'll do that if you make that bird over there land on my shoulder, and if it poops on me, I know that's what I'm supposed to do. We make some kind of weird thing like that. When we know in our heart of hearts. Here's the thing. God wants us to trust him so that he can prove himself to us. Faith comes first. We cannot please him without faith. He wants you to step out of the boat. He wants you to say, okay, yes, I will do this, even though I don't know where I'm going. I don't know how this is going to end. I don't know how I'm going to pay for this. I don't know what this is going to be. If I give my life to Christ and I go all in and I ask for forgiveness and I become a Jesus freak, what are my friends going to say? How are they going to treat me? I'm going to have to find new friends. He wants you just to say, I don't care about any of that. I'm just in. I'm getting in the wheelbarrow. If I fall, I fall. But I'm going to trust God. I'm going to have faith that he's promised what he's promised for me, he will deliver. Faith comes first. I'm going to ask the band to come up. As they come up, I want to show you another picture. I love pictures. It's like story time. Here's a picture. Anybody know what that is? Anybody know what kind of animal that is? Anybody? Scott Klein probably has one stuffed somewhere, doesn't he? I don't know. It's close. Gazelle. I've heard gazelle. Heard some different things. It's actually this animal right here. Why don't you look at it? It's an African impala. It's an African impala right there. Beautiful animal. Fun little fact about an African impala. An African impala can jump 10 feet high. I mean, that's as tall as a basketball goal. It's crazy. They can jump 10 feet high, and they can jump a distance of 30 feet. Seriously, Google it. African impala, they jump 10 feet high, and they can jump for a distance of 30 feet. You know how far that is? It's insane. Go to the zoo and find the African impala. And you will find that they are in an enclosure that's 3 feet high. It's a 3 feet high wall. They can jump 10 feet, 30 feet out. They're in an enclosure that's 3 feet tall. Here's the funny thing about an African impala. Instinctually, they will not jump unless they can see where their feet are going to land. Isn't that nuts? So they live their whole life in this little tiny enclosure behind a 3 feet wall. And I guarantee you, some of you are living a Christian life in an enclosure surrounded by a 3 feet wall because you can't see where your feet are going to land on the other end. You're a chicken. You're yellow. Are you going to have the faith to trust what God has promised for your life? Are you going to be okay living behind the 3 feet wall? Are you going to experience the whole world that He has to offer for you? Are you just going to eat some oats behind a 3 foot wall? I ask you to stand. I think a lot of us want to know, we seek God in our relationship, and some of us are like, you know what, we're all at different levels. I get that. Some of you are probably here going, I'm not sure I even believe all this nonsense. I'm not sure if I'm a Christian. I don't know what I even know how to become one. I'm going to help you with that, by the way. Some of us know that God has laid something specific on our hearts. Some of you, I guarantee you, some of you this morning, God has been dealing with you on a certain subject or something. I don't know what it is, or start a business or take in foster children or do something. Witness to a friend, invite somebody to church. I don't know what it is. But we're in our minds, we're going, man, if I confess my sin and I go all in, what am I going to do? If I start tithing, how's that going to work? What's that going to look like? If I choose to get married instead of living in this relationship where I'm just cohabitating with somebody, again, maybe if I start a business, what's that going to look like? If I quit my job and become a pastor, what's that going to look like? We ask ourselves those things. But I encourage you this morning to take a step of faith. And whatever you're holding on to, that you have control of, that you don't want to let go of. Oh, I don't want to let go of my friends. I don't want to let go of my party life. I don't want to let go of this. Whatever it is you're holding on to, I guarantee you, if you let that stuff go, ready for the ride. Because you'll get to know the goodness of God. You'll get to know the love of God. and you'll get to know the faithfulness of God. Psalms 100:3-5 says this, "Know that the Lord is good. It is He who made us, and we are His. We are His people, the sheep of His pasture. Enter His gates with thanksgiving and courts with praise, and give thanks to Him and praise His name. For the Lord is good, and His love endures forever. His faithfulness continues through all generations." And in this verse is hidden the key to slaying the Christian atheist in each one of us. In this verse right here. You know what it tells you have to do? You have to enter the courts with thanksgiving. And when the sheep, in the old days, when they brought the sheep into the courts, it was for one reason, to sacrifice them. They lost everything. So enter into His courts this morning and sacrifice everything that you're holding on to. And say, you know what? I'm giving it all to you, Jesus. And I promise you, you will never regret it. I'll give you a chance to pray. Bow your heads. Maybe you're here this morning and you know God's been dealing with you on something, and if you're like me, I sat there through these sermons wishing it was just get over quick so I could stop thinking about it. Stop thinking about the fact that I had to get rid of something in my life, that I had to actually let go of something. So if that's you this morning, I'm just asking you to be honest with yourself. Give that to God. I'm going to pray for you. I'm going to give you a chance to pray. If you're new here and you don't know how to be a Christian, I'll walk through you. Let me pray with you. Father, thank you so much for this church. Thank you for bringing us here, God. Help us to not be Christian atheists. Help us to just not be those people that say we believe in God, but it's really not evidenced in anything in our life. Help it to become to show in our lives, Lord, that we trust you, that we're obedient, that we're willing to step in the wheelbarrow, that we're willing to step out of the boat, that we're willing to do something that makes absolutely no sense to any of us or any of our friends. But God, we're willing to do that to have the chance of experiencing life to the fullest that you've promised us. Father, I pray that there's somebody here that doesn't know you, and if you're here and doesn't know Jesus, just say this prayer. Dear Jesus, forgive me of my sins. Forgive me of my unbelief. Help me to come into a relationship with you and change my life. Maybe you're here and you've been battling with something. You're a believer, you're a follower, but you've let yourself slip and you've become complacent in your lifestyle. That you would just say, God, renew a fire in me. Help me to be passionate about something. Help me to be willing to take chances and be obedient to what you are asking me to do. And I pray if there's anybody that prayed those prayers this morning, nobody looking around, just slip your hand up. I just want to pray with you. I'm not going to, anybody pray that prayer, just slip your hand up. Okay. Maybe some of you are scared, just slip your hand up. That's okay. Father, I just pray if there's, you know our hearts, Lord, this morning. You know each one of us. God, I just thank you for this church. I thank you for these people that are willing to be obedient. Go with us, I pray, this weekend. Thank you for letting us be here. Thank you for having your Holy Spirit here, Lord, this morning. Thank you for loving us and being patient.